Clubhouse.
Welcome to Pod Clubhouse's Pop Culture Review. This is Caroline.
This is Paul.
And this is Mike. Tonight we're looking back at the week that was for the week of January 22nd to the 28th of 2023. Caroline, why are we doing this show? What is Pod Clubhouse's Pop Culture Review? You give the origin because you give all of the Pod Clubhouse origin stories.
Do I now? I'm like the oldest. I'm like
the
the tree of life.
woman.
I'm the tree of life, right? Is that what on Avatar?
The Lorax.
I'm like, hello, children, gather round.
I speak for the podcast.
Basically, so all right, here at Pod Clubhouse, we have lots of different hosts, and we like to mix and mingle with different people. But the three core people are myself, Paul, and Mike, and we don't get a chance to get to talk with each other very often. And when we do, we're usually discussing your favorite TV shows. So we decided we were going to start a show here where we all get to talk about different little blips of things that we're picking up in pop culture this week, and just give you a little feedback about what we're thinking, recommendations, how you can spend your own time if you'd like to pick up a book or listen to some new music maybe, or check out a new show. And we're just going to touch on a bunch of different little things here that we've been checking out.
Also, it'll force us to have mandatory board meetings more often, which lead to more tax write-offs for us, which we like.
Yes, of course. So. Hey, you know what has been hot biz this week that so many people have been talking about?
What's that, Caroline?
You know that show Last of Us? I know you guys know it. I know both of you guys have been watching it, and I have been watching it through my fingers because I'm the biggest scare baby that lived, and all the other scare babies died. I just lived. I'm the only one. But I want to hear a little bit about it from you guys. Tell me things you guys are liking, things you guys are hating. Tell me.
Well, first, I think we have to say that the other scare babies all got cordyceps fungus infections, and that is how they died. They all became clickers and perished. I don't know, Paul. I mean, did you play Last of Us? Let's start there, because I think most of the dialogue I think about Last of Us is coming down to, did you play the game or not play the game, and how is that affecting your viewing experience?
No, I've not played the game. Have you?
I did. I was Tom and I were late to it, but I need to play games these days that don't require super fast reaction time because I am old and slow, and I no longer have the zest for video games that I once had as a young man.
I cannot play online anymore. I must play on easy mode.
Well, yeah, see, I've come to the point where, baby ass baby mode is nothing to be ashamed of, because it helps you get the trophy.
Did you call it baby ass baby mode?
Yes. That is taken from another video game show called What's Good Games. So
it's like, I bought this game. What am I going to do? Not play it just because it's too hard for me on medium?
Yeah, Tom and I just started the newest Call of Duty game, Modern Warfare 2, which came out at the end of last year, and they've got seasoned veteran Deathbringer. I'm like, no, let's go to recruit. Let's start there.
High schooler.
Yeah, like a lot of time to college dropout.
Paintball enthusiast.
Exactly. A video game player, no real military experience.
Yeah.
So that's the level I'm at right now. But but The Last of Us was a great game. We flew through it. It's extremely. I don't like horror. I'm not a big horror guy, so I'm always trepidatious of playing like the Resident Evil games or zombie stuff. I'm not big into horror. It doesn't do it for me, and I don't really like horror movies either. But this was supposed to have such a good narrative to it that's what eventually made me play it. And it's true. It is a gripping, engrossing narrative. You feel for these characters. You get weepy. And the first two episodes actually play out pretty faithfully to the game, especially the very first episode with Joel and his daughter Sarah and how that all plays out. And then the time jump, all that is in the game. So it was very familiar watching. There is a heavy horror element to it. The clickers are gross. I think they've done a great job of adapting that for television and making it very believable. They have changed some of the core lore. They've expanded it greatly, more than the video game allowed for. But this is a really faithful adaptation. So I'm excited to see how the show keeps playing out based off of my experience with the game.
I saw an article. I mean, I've seen a lot of that discussion that you've been talking about. I've even seen some most of the dialogue seems to be fans of the game are cool with the show. I've seen some diehards, like there always are for any adaptation, that are saying it's completely ruined for one reason or another, a lack of faithfulness, blah, 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 whatever.
Which is not true. So the main mechanism is how the infected spread. And in the game, the infected are spread, basically. The fungus infects by spores, basically like dust clouds of the fungus, and they explode, and then you can become infected that way. And they've changed that in the show, but they did it for a logistical reason. But I actually think it's more terrifying how the show has it than how the video game had it. I think it's a good improvement. Change, sure, but I actually think it improves the horror factor of it all. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, I saw a discussion about whether or not the success of this would possibly propel more video game adaptations, and I thought, I'm curious to know your thoughts, but I mean, I thought no, that there's been a much longer history of video game to either movie or TV adaptations that go like shit. Resident Evil, for as many times as it has been attempted, hasn't really found its stride.
The graveyard is littered with video game adaptations that just bombed, whether for movies or for television or animated or live action. This definitely seems to be the exception to the rule. I think if the game has a great narrative, and a good team behind it to do the adaptation, those are recipes for success. If it's just a shooter, you're probably going to fizzle out, right? Because there's nothing to build on. There's no world to really bring into a television or movie landscape.
You know, what's funny is that I actually don't mind the Resident Evil movies. I know they're not good. But I still find them enjoyable on some, just, I don't know, spectacle kind of level. But still, there's been, computer animated versions, the Netflix series that no one seemed to like. The movies themselves are very poorly reviewed, but still somehow they made like 6 or 7 of them. Yeah. So when I read that, I was just like, no, did a bot write this? Is this Chat GPT making an article just on a single concept? Cause it seems like, no, this might be lightning in a bottle, actually.
I think another key element, too, is that Neil Druckmann, who created the video game and was one of the main story writers on the video game, is also one of the 2 main creatives on the TV show. So he created this great narrative-driven game and is now closely working with it as they bring it to the screen. And I bring that up really because God of War is the next really big video game adaptation that's on the horizon to come out. And I'm a huge fan of the God of War games. And if Amazon, I think it's Amazon that's bringing it to screen, if they don't take Cory Barlog and his team who created the video game, it's going to suffer. They're not going to capture that magic in a bottle. It's one of the smartest things is the fact that Neil Druckmann is so closely involved in bringing the game to the screen.
Well, and to your point, 2 points, but to that exact point, the success of the recent Cyberpunk Edge Runners series on Netflix. It was well received by both critics and fans, which almost never happens. But that directly involved the guy that's been carrying the Cyberpunk banner ever since he created it back in the 80s this whole time. So if you see the Cyberpunk like role-playing game or the video game, it's all based on his universe. And he was, I don't know that he wrote it, but I'm pretty sure that he was in the writer's room like a consultant, creative consultant type, when it came time to make that show. To go back to that graveyard of failed experiments, I gotta point out that Uwe Boll made a lot of them. He made a lot of video game adaptations, and he's responsible for a lot of that.
I mean, I think we could probably dedicate a 3-hour dedicated episode to this, and maybe worth doing when Chris Pratt's "Hey, it's a Mario" comes out in a couple of months. Maybe that'd be worth doing, because Lord knows what that's going to be like. But we probably should move on because I think we'll get bogged down in video game talk. If you're into horror or you're into good narrative and you haven't played the game, I don't think you're missing anything by not having played the game. I give it 2 thumbs up. Definitely invest in it. Maybe don't watch it at nighttime if you're, a scared baby.
It's just pronounced scare baby.
Scare baby, sorry.
It's sort of an anti-Walking Dead, where Walking Dead had a mysterious illness that caused everyone to become a zombie when they died, and a large cast with all different kinds of motivations, all needing to lean on each other and all that. I get the idea that this is going to be like a road movie, not a road show, but they're going to, cast members will come and go. You've seen the previews. There's like Nick Offerman and a lot of familiar faces
playing a key role from the game,
in there, but I don't think they're going to stick around forever. Famous people have already died, so I think they're going to just move along. It's going to focus on the 2 characters that are on the poster in not a spoiler fashion, because it's the poster.
Well, it's their story. I mean, it's the story of Joel and Ellie. It is their story as they make their way through this world. One of the things that the show has done over the video game is the first 2 episodes, anyway, have given history. The first one, the cold open, set back in like 1968, set the table for the show, which is not in the game. The second episode opened 2 days before the outbreak went wide, which is not in the game. So they're building the lore out without contradicting anything in it, but they're giving you answers. They're showing you what happened before, which is important for a TV show, right? You got to set the table. You got to really world build. So again, a good example of the creatives taking the game and the lore, which is extensive in the game, and building it out and building out that world like you would expect an HBO show to do. So if they keep doing that, you're going to get a really fleshed out world that feels like you're kind of in it and living in it.
So speaking of a fleshed out world, one that already has an existing world is the world of Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Machine and the gang. Why are we recreating it for a new age, Mike? Have you figured that out?
I mean, this is the way of the world now, right? We take something and we reimagine it for a new generation. Here's the thing. And I don't want to be the umpteenth person to dump on Velma, which is streaming on HBO Max. I don't want to be the umpteenth person to dump on it, but it's not good. But I think it's not good for different reasons than maybe other people do. Well, yes, the common reason is there's no reason to take this beloved 30, 40-year-old IP and change it so drastically that you don't recognize it. There's no Scooby-Doo. That's a fundamental issue in a Scooby-Doo based show.
I didn't know that, Mike.
There's no Scooby-Doo.
I'm a little disturbed by that revelation.
Yeah. So, and I've watched the first 4 episodes, the first 4 that are out. I caught up on it just because there had been so much hubbub about it. I like animated shows. I like adult animated shows. I don't have a problem with what people are citing as the wokeness of it. I really don't. I don't think it's particularly funny. It's not family friendly. It's not a show I would watch with Tom. And Tom is 14. Now, material content wise, your teenagers can watch this, but it's very sexualized for this IP. They could have created a brand new show with these characters. They resemble so little of the established Scooby-Doo gang, Mystery Incorporated gang, that you could have taken these 4 characters, made them new characters, and you wouldn't have lost anything. There's nothing connecting this to that. So why take this IP and change it? Just go create these new characters. Because here's the thing. They're all very unlikable, except for the Shaggy counterpart, who's not named Shaggy. He's named Norval. And they've made Fred, Daphne, Velma extremely unlikable. All of them. On top of the jokes, which I don't think are particularly funny, but they're mean-spirited. They're not really telling the Scooby-Doo gang story here. They're telling a Velma story. But this Velma doesn't look like any Velma you know, so just make it set in its own brand new world. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but it's like, it's so not connected to what anyone knows as Scooby-Doo as to why even bother.
I think we've had a conversation like this about other attempts at rebooting a legacy IP. Wherein whoever has control of the IP now decides that we're going to take a character that has been around for 70 or 80 years And rather than risk making a new character completely, we're just going to have to like make an alternate universe version of this character that has XYZ type modern alterations to whatever their makeup is. Every time it happens, I don't think it's a great idea myself. I'm obviously not in charge, but the results, they're never like a home run. They're always like kind of like some yay, some not so yay.
We've definitely had situations where we feel like these characters seem familiar from a a franchise that we all know, but it feels like they're using that to create viewers as opposed to feeling like this was like a justified, reasonable plot to bring back with these characters. It feels like you're just using our alliance, our loyalty to a brand in order to get us to watch. Because if they didn't call it Velma and they called it Joanne, no one would be talking about it, but we're talking about it because they're calling it Velma and this is a brand we all know and love. And so we want to tune in. And so when it's not what you expect and it feels like they used your nostalgia against you.
They weaponized it and then kind of bastardized it. Do you guys saw Spaceballs, I'm assuming, at some point in your life?
Yes.
There's a scene in Spaceballs where Lord Helmet, or Dark Helmet, captures the gang, captures the Spaceballs gang, and they turn them around, and it's like the stunt double versions of it, and they're like, the Daphne Zinica characters is a man in drag wearing like a beard and stuff, and they're smoking and barf is whatever. That's what this is. This is people dressed up mostly like characters but otherwise are completely unrecognizable. You know how TV shows, the first TV show always has to be like go super hard and be salacious to draw you in. And while they're doing this like metatextual voiceover, you're seeing like girls soaping themselves up in a shower. But I have a 14-year-old. I don't need to watch that with him. And this is a show that I would have sat down. I mean, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated from like 10 years ago now. The best adaptation of Scooby-Doo since probably the original. That was Scooby-Doo, but modernized, modern tech, modern stories. It wasn't necessarily pulling off rubber masks, hanging out of a painting, but that vibe of the original late 60s, early 70s show was there, but modernized in a way that you understood the IP, even though it had been updated. This is the Spaceballs stunt doubles acting in a way that you don't find pleasant, you don't find funny, and you feel like you were bamboozled.
Do you know what it's called when a man stunt performer performs the part of a woman?
I don't know.
It's called wigging.
Oh, yes, I did know that.
Wow.
That's your fun non sequitur fact. So that person was wigging as Daphne Zanika.
Exactly.
But I'm not the only. I'm not the only one indulging in some Mindy Kaling these days. I know you guys are over there doing a Mindy Project rewatch. What prompted it? How is it going? Do you like it as fondly as maybe when it originally aired?
At our house, we need to digest some lighter fare before we conk out for the night. Now, one of us can consume, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and sleep like a baby, but the other one wouldn't sleep for a week if we did that. So we have to choose things that are nice and easy and bite-sized. And the Mindy Project is great. It's funny. It's sharp. It's a laugh a minute, I think. And so we hadn't watched it in a couple years, probably.
Yeah. So I think, if it's something you haven't watched and you wanted to compare the writing or the pacing, I would say Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. I would say 30 Rock. It has a lot of the same jokes. It has a lot of the same banter that you're going to find on those shows. And, this is a show from 2012. So a lot of you guys might be like, why are you watching this wicked old show? Again, it's funny. And it brings like all kinds of just kind of wacky antics, I guess I want to say.
Yeah.
It's easy to see how Mindy could voice something from a Scooby-Doo franchise if that was sticking with their original theme of being wacky and antic-y. I like it very much because it's visually something I enjoy. Like Mindy, the character, is very colorful. She's very funny. She's got like a lot going on in her life. These are things that I enjoy watching. And I know you guys you have different tastes completely. But for me, this is the type of stuff that just makes me smile and laugh like right before I go to bed. So if you guys are looking for like a bedtime, something to pop on, it's on both Hulu and Netflix. And, there's like 6 seasons and you can check it out. And it's funny. It cracks me up. The premise is hilarious to me. And I just like it a lot.
And it came out just on the cusp before woke sensibilities started to color like everything. So even though she's a woman of color as the central character of the show, that is almost never a big deal about what she does ever, right? And that's not the way they make shows anymore. Or I think it's kind of interesting that they really hit hard on Danny's Catholicism in a way you don't really see in sitcoms.
Right.
Hey, what are you talking about over there? It's like Catholicism. What the fuck?
It's very irreverent, and that alone is, I guess, kind of refreshing in its own way. Like, I think that's what you're trying to say.
I remember it being an edgy show
it
for the
is.
time. Yeah.
It is edgy, but it's even more edgy now than it even was then, because half the stuff they say you could not say now without raising a lot of eyebrows. And yeah, they make the jokes that are, from old school stuff that, that are still pretty funny,
Exactly. So yeah, if you haven't given it a shot, and you liked things like 30 Rock
or Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, because she's definitely like a derivation in many ways of that same type of character. Colorful, funny, a little wild and out there, but it's great. I love it for just like a kind of chill out for the night kind of show. It's perfect.
It ran for 3 seasons on Fox, 3 more seasons on Hulu, but surprisingly, you can't find everything on Hulu. You have to find it on Netflix, which is weird.
It is. All right,
Streaming
move on.
rights make no sense. Well, let's talk about Your Honor real quick. Caroline and I are covering that. We're in the unexpected second season of Your Honor that we didn't think was going to happen. The original series came out literally 2 years ago, came out end of 2020 into the beginning of 2021. Somehow we're 2 years from that. So this week coming out, this coming weekend is part 13. The episode that aired on Showtime Sunday on the 22nd was part 12. How are you liking the show so far? Because you and I, we talk about this for 2 hours every week, every episode.
We do. You guys have to go check that one out.
Yeah, it's Tales from Yaya. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, podclubhouse.com, wherever you listen to podcasts, it's there.
So this one is led by Bryan Cranston, which, automatically makes it pretty amazing. And he was fantastic in season 1. Super happy to have him back in season 2. I think that we really felt like the season 1 was a great beginning, middle, and end of a story. So we weren't really expecting, like you said, the season 2, but it was a really wow when we saw it coming. And actually, Paul and I were just recently out in LA, and we got to see and the props room and stuff, and all the Your Honor tags were on everything. And it was so exciting and fun for me to be like, oh, I'm going to see all this stuff at Warner Brothers Prop
House. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they had all the tags to pull everything.
Just
and it was
lamps and
so
stuff.
Fun, to get to see what was going to be coming on our screen. But, this is a show that I think it makes you think. It has mystery. It's got thriller aspects to it. It's got just all kinds of things that makes you want to pay attention to it. This is not the show that I like to watch when I'm going to sleep and, my eyes are closing.
Not a good night-night show.
No, and not even I don't really like to be doing any type of other things while I'm watching it, because there's a lot of great details in it and a lot of great dialogue. And I just think it's smart and it's interesting, and these characters are well written. You feel like this could really happen. You put yourself in his shoes and you're like, what would I do if I was in this situation? There's not a lot of great stories out there where I feel like, especially, I feel like you guys watch a lot of shows that's if you are going to put yourself in there, it's very like end of the world kind of stuff, like, you know, like Last of Us.
You keep shooting.
Right.
That's exactly all you would do.
Exactly. And this is more
Try not
subtle.
to get kissed by the zombie, because it's going to make you a zombie.
Definitely
Don't do it.
Don't make out with zombies generally, y'all. Okay. But this is the type of show where it's way more subtle than that. It's an everyday situation that really could happen, and it just blows up and just snowballs into this crazy, crazy situation.
I think some people have thought that season 2 is off to a little bit of a slow start, a little meandering, though that seems too strong. But that's what I'm reading from some people. I can tell you, especially starting with part 13, which is out this coming weekend, and then picking up in the weeks to come, I think you're going to be happy with the story as it goes. It looks like they finally found a direction, and they're going to be kind of throwing themselves full steam into it. So I'm excited what's going to be coming ahead in the final 6 weeks of the show.
It is weird, though, to see the, if you're talking about season on season, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's this huge gap in between. The actress who plays the Baxter daughter, since we also watch Yellowstone, we have to flip between her being the governor's aide de camp, right, and then like a high school dropout in both shows.
Mafia daughter.
Yeah. Right.
So that's kind of funny.
It is. It's weird because that's two very different stages of life.
Right, exactly. Like 10 years apart.
But she does an amazing job with it. And that's why she sells it. And there's plenty of people who could not. And she is managing to sell it. So give her props for that.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just saying it's a mental thing. Like when I watch Tom Holland play Spider-Man, and then I see him play the drug addicted ex-Marine in Cherry. It's kind of a mental gee, Mr. Stark, after
what the hell?
that's him in the next, and going back to Spider-Man after I've seen him, do heroin. So it's just a mental weirdness.
That's funny.
I have an oddball show to throw out that I picked up. Really came about actually because Tom had seen a trailer for it and asked me about it, and it ignited in my head that I had screeners from October that I never watched. I had planned on watching but never did. It's called SAS Rogue Heroes. This was an MGM Plus, what formerly was known as Epix series. It's a limited 6-part series. I don't think it's going to get a second season, or at least I don't think one has been announced. Hopefully people don't check that and find out I'm wrong, but it feels like it is just a 6-episode series. It is very British. So definitely watch it with your subtitles on. I'm going to say that right off the board, because everyone is either Scottish, British, or Irish. They're all talking together, and sometimes it's just like, whoa. And this is from a guy who grew up in New York with heavy New York accents, and I'm like, whoa.
You can't understand the Welsh. I mean, that's for sure.
He said he'd like a Diet Coke. So quick synopsis. It feels kind of Danny Boyle-ish, where it's a World War II story, but it uses like classic rock tracks and some like new wave tracks, music and stuff, and there's some like montagey music video aspects to it, but the story itself is these bunch of broken military people, for whatever reason, are tasked with creating a rogue outfit to go behind enemy lines and destroy Air Force bases as a way of protecting British assets in North Africa in World War II. So take a World War II movie and combine it with the concept of Suicide Squad, and that is what this show is. It's irreverent, it's well written, it's funny, it's engaging, it'll pull your heartstrings a little bit as the show goes on. It's fast paced, it has a lot of action. It's really got something for everyone. Watch it with subtitles on. It has no big stars really that Americans are going to know, so I'm never going to bother listening. You can go to IMDb and look at who's in it. If you're a big British cinephile, maybe you'll know some of these people. Found it super engaging. I don't know how anyone's going to watch it. I don't know anyone who has MGM Plus. I wouldn't be able to watch it if I didn't have screener access to it. But it's just one of those shows where money was put into it. It's BBC produced, I believe. It looks gorgeous. You feel like you're in the hot desert of North Africa. It's fantastic. It's worth the watch if you can find it. So an irreverent 2 thumbs up from me on that.
I also spent about 15 minutes watching the first episode of the new Night Court. Did not like that all that much. Did you catch that, Mike?
I didn't. I didn't. I loved the original so much. There are a couple of foundational things that I credit my sense of humor to, and Night Court is one of those things that I credit my sense of humor to. So I'm very worried about watching it because I feel like it will destroy a pillar of my psyche.
Well, it's a little like they actually borrowed some of the humor from the 80s and tried to bring it forward like untouched, just like in a sealed box, like a time capsule. But they don't have the personalities to pull it off, I don't think. What did you think of it? You watched about 10 minutes of my 15 minutes, Caroline. What did you think?
I also did not like it. I felt like the humor was just falling super flat for me. It was really basic and really generic to me. Like, it just wasn't clever at all.
Their cat seemed tired.
Yeah. And I'm not a huge fan of the way that they didn't really update the humor and they didn't really try to do anything with it. And they just kind of did sort of that same borderline slapsticky, but not even that funny. Like,
a little bit of physical humor.
Yeah. And it just, I don't know. It felt cringy to me. I was not feeling great about it. And like you said, Mike, we all grew up with Night Court. And so you have that already sitting back there as like the don't mess with that, please. And then you start watching this and you're like, these characters are not my people. Like, I don't like this group. And so, just for me, I'm going to pass.
Is Melissa Rauch doing like a Harry Anderson impersonation?
No, but she's so well known as playing Bernadette on Big Bang Theory. I think that's going to be a rough thing for her to shake off generally, because she has such a specific character that she played there that it's a little hard not to just see it as like Bernadette playing a judge. And so that's equally weird for me. I mean, she does stuff like holds up the gavel and goes, they gave me a neat thing like this. Like, she says shit like that you're like, you're a judge and that's your gavel.
That's
and
true.
Stop being like that. Like, I don't know. I don't like that. And she didn't need to she doesn't have that super baby voice, but that's her type of demeanor when it comes to some of this stuff. And it's like, ooh.
Yeah, she's not using the nasal Bernadette voice.
She's not, but she does baby comments like that where you're like, a judge would know what a gavel is. Stop even acting like that. That's not a good look.
She
literally held it up and goes, they gave me one of these. Like, what are you doing?
Is Dan Fielding still Dan Fielding? Is he still like a aruga kind of guy?
No, he's super worn out and just tired, and that's what he says. I mean, that's the character he's playing. He's playing a totally washed out, worn out, done kind of character.
He doesn't practice law anymore.
No, she brings him back in because of Dad.
And he flips. He was, I don't know if you recall, but he was.
Oh, is she playing Harry's daughter? Is that the setup for it?
Yes, she's Harry's daughter. Harry has passed. And so she comes to him and says, will you please come back?
We need a public defender because ours sucks. And if you don't recall, he was the prosecutor in the old days.
Right.
So he could be a little more shark-like, and so now you have him playing this more public defender role, which, if you remember, was played by Marky Post, and it was always a little bit more compassionate or warm or whatever, which is totally not his character. That's not how he played it. And he, in this, is like, he's just so...
He doesn't like people.
No, he's just tired.
He's over people. He's over everything.
But so is that a good match? I don't know. For me, I mean, again,
just the jokes didn't work.
Go watch the original Night Court, you guys. If you want to see Night Court, go watch the original. It was great. They did an amazing job with it. Those jokes like stand on their own. And this one, at least at this point, they haven't found their footing yet. Maybe they will, but they haven't yet.
Hot take: the opening bass line of Night Court better than the bass line in Seinfeld.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It might even be the same person.
Whoa, that's happening. So I've got another weird one for you guys that it was one that for me, I would not ever think I would pick up, but I've been watching this Bob Hart's Abishola show, which again, we were on the WB lot just a couple weeks ago. We got a chance to tour the set. We had never seen the show before. And it just sort of like out of like some need to be like, well, since we were on the set and we saw all the different rooms in their apartment and we saw everything, we should turn on the show. And so we did. And I got sucked in. I got super sucked in.
It's a Chuck Lorre show.
And it has a lot of that 2.5 Men kind of humor in a lot of ways, which, you know, you guys might be like, that's not for me. But with a lot more like love and relationships. This is not single men kind of joking. This is like a completely different side of joking. Still, you've got that caustic mom kind of, you know, element to it. But it's funny to me, and it has this whole ethnic portion because all of a huge portion of the cast is supposed to be from Nigeria, and they talk about their culture so much. It's so wrapped up into the show that everything from costumes to food to the places they talk about, everything. It's all, for me, it's very like, it's educational in a lot of ways for me. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. It's really interesting. And I really like the actress that plays Abishola. She's very engaging to me, and her friendships are very real. The conversations she has with her best friend are so real and hilarious. I'm like, this is the exact same way I talk to my best friend. I love this. So this is one that I'm sure flies under a lot of people's radar. It actually did get renewed for another season, which is fantastic. It's like season 5 already. I know. The episodes are super duper short if you're like binging them. I think they're like 17 minutes or something like that. So I'm talking like super short without the commercials. And so you can just whiz right through the storylines, and a lot happens. I mean, they go to Nigeria at one point. So I mean, there's a lot that goes on. Yeah, I recommend.
Latest landing pad for the former Badger from Breaking Bad,
and Gilmore Girls,
and Mom. He was on Mom,
yeah,
and so now he's on this,
yeah, and then of course
Matt Jones, exactly,
yeah.
Yep. Billy Gardell is Gardell. He's the Bob in the show,
and they kind of
built. I find him funny.
They built his weight loss desire, I guess his real life need to lose weight. They kind of built it into the character's journey also.
Yes.
Like that was always needing to be the plan for Bob.
So Abishola is a nurse, and they meet because he has a heart attack and is in the hospital. So that's how they meet initially. That's the very first moments really with them. So you have a lot of that Florence Nightingale kind of stuff going on. But the thing is that the character of Abishola, she's so no nonsense and so just like in your face, says like whatever, that again, I mean, I find a lot of kinship in that. And I just think she's so funny, you know, and her friends are just great. So recommend you guys go check that one out.
But it is hearts. It is like
Bob Hearts,
like emoji hearts.
Yeah, it is like an emoji, but you have to type it out if you want to actually find it somewhere. It's a little weird, but yeah.
New episodes air on CBS, and the old episodes you said are on HBO Max.
Yeah, and it's so fast. 17 minutes, you guys blink of an eye, and you're like on to the next storyline.
And you don't have to be worried about your show being canceled. Like we said, it was just 2 days ago, just renewed for season 5. So
it's a really quick pace show. So like in that 17 minutes, a ton happens, and they let a lot of things happen between episodes. So the next episode come on and you're like, oh, the graduation already happened or whatever. Like they just keep it going. It's fast paced. They're like moving along. We're not just sitting there all day.
Do you guys want to get into cancellations and renewals? I know we're going a little bit long here.
Speaking of one cancellation, we can go back to Jorah Mormont himself, who played Bruce Wayne in Titans. He never actually, I don't think he got put on the Batman suit, but he did play Bruce Wayne in Titans, a recently canceled show on HBO Max.
HBO Max, the hammer continues to fall on HBO Max shows. Doom Patrol and Titans, both are going to finish their season 4, and they're both canceled. But at least they're being canceled and not promised a new season and then unpromised, or at least they're not being shot a new season and then which will never air. Looking at you, Snowpiercer.
No kidding, right? I mean, that's not canceled, but it. I mean, they don't have anywhere to show it.
Doesn't have a home.
It's homeless right now.
The fact that being Zasloved is becoming like a verb in the industry is a whole thing. And people should be wary of your favorite HBO Max or Warner Brothers produced shows.
It's almost like HBO Max has been a complete disaster in terms of accounting, finance, whatever the money term is, to suggest that when they conceived HBO Max and put it together into a product that they sold to people, the fact that they're basically tearing it apart just a couple years later and shuttering the shows that they made and making it so that the products that they made that were associated with that brand you cannot find anymore, it kind of suggests abject failure.
Yeah, I don't know. This is I all I can think of watching all this go on is way back when AOL bought Warner Brothers like 20 years ago. And that was
that rip-roaring success, you mean?
It was such a clusterfuck merger, and no one was happy except for shareholders, maybe. This feels so much like that. I don't know. I don't have a problem with cancellations, actually. Truth be told, cancellations are a part of life if you watch TV. Shows get canceled. Shows that aren't supposed to be done get done. That happens. My bigger problem with what's going on in the industry are the shows that were promised seasons and then are reneged and then unpromised, or worse, the shows, and this is happening more and more. AMC just did this to 2 shows that have an entire season shot or most of a season shot, film edited, ready to go, like the new season of Snowpiercer, and won't be aired. You can't just do that for the tax write-off. That is bad for the art of television. There has to be a line where business and art don't cross. Canceling a show, fine, cancel it. But if you've made a commitment to continue a show, you've got to honor that commitment.
I think it's especially unfair when, you've created storylines that are supposed to go across X amount of seasons. You've been promised X amount of seasons, and then they pull this, because then not only have you taken the show from us, but you've created this huge void where had the writers and creators known that they were going to be done, they would have paced the show differently. They would have paced the storylines differently. They would have done whatever reveals they needed to do. They wouldn't leave us hanging. That's the absolute worst of it, is when there was still more that they were going to tell you about that character, and they just paced it out in a way that the time ran out before they told the story. And that's just like, how disappointing.
As a fan, that sucks. As a person that tries to understand the industry, both, in terms of money and craft, I think it also sucks given like for instance, those television shows that you mentioned that are almost done but will never be aired, or Batgirl, or going back to our Scooby-Doo connection. I think there was a second Scoob that they had made, and that will never be seen. Or like the final season of Westworld, where rather than make it, even though the lead actors are on contract, it's cheaper just to pay them whatever millions they're owed rather than actually go through with production. But that all sounds fine, like they're paid for their day's labor. Okay, whatever. But all of those craftspeople that are involved, don't they make residuals based on future streamings and shit like that?
Right. That's why HBO pulled Westworld from, it not only canceled Westworld, but that's why HBO pulled it from the streaming services, because if they left them there for people just to enjoy for years to come, they'd have to pay out residuals on those.
Or those unsown seasons even. It's like they're hedging against needing to pay on those in the future.
Right, because there's an enormous tax write-off by just saying, even if it's shot, just calling it a quote-unquote sunk cost and just taking the tax benefit of it. But to do that, they can't air it. They have to shit can it. The Snowpiercer is interesting because Snowpiercer, while airing on TNT, which is a Warner channel, was not produced by them. And that's why I think if a show does have a chance of being shopped around, it is Snowpiercer, because it's another production company that actually owns that show that had just sold it to TNT. So for all you guys on the eternal train out there holding out hope, that at least that's a show that feels like maybe it will find a home at least for one more, the final season.
I was just surprised, when HBO went live, they had a couple of launch shows, like Raised by Wolves and that something with Anna Kendrick and a couple other things, and all that has been pulled off. Like, you can't, if you were thinking, you know what, I'm going to go catch up on Raised by Wolves. No, you cannot do it. It doesn't exist. You can go buy the Blu-ray maybe if that exists, but you can't go to HBO Max. That all just seemed like so odd, but maybe that's it. Maybe Ridley Scott, because he produced that show, made it very expensive to license, or his residual is just like that much, because there's nobody really that famous in that show. Most famous guys in it was from Vikings, which is sort of a niche show anyway.
New season of Vikings Valhalla, the spinoff show, just launched on Netflix, if you guys are going to look for that. So Just doing word association in my brain. I don't know. This is another conversation that's larger than the shorter time frame we're looking for here. What is going on in it? And honestly, we should really bring on some of our writer friends and other creatives that we've made over the years now to talk about it if they were willing to, because they're in it and they're the ones that are actually suffering for it. We're fans. We are watching. We're consumers of content. And so we feel it in that end. I can't imagine what it must be like job security for a writer in a writer room or a staff writer, someone that doesn't have their own show and is just reliant on working room to room, show to show, what it must be like in Hollywood, or not just a writer, but any of the creatives or cast or production members behind the screen.
What people overlook as consumers anyway is that there's no golden parachute waiting for those people. There's no like built-in retirement to that line of work for the most part. You know? No,
if they don't get enough hours, they're going to lose their fucking health insurance. Like it's not, it's very dog eat dog. It's very working for your next paycheck, unless you're in that very rare upper echelon. It's a really dangerous time for the television industry anyway. I'm a little more than worried about it, given how important TV is in my life, which, is a whole other conversation, but
a private conversation.
Let's pivot from TV for just a second, because I know all of us are reading some different books, and I know Paul's like a huge Audible guy. So, Paul, what are you reading these days?
Well, I flip between a few different books depending on who's in the car. So, believe it or not, when I'm taking the kids to school, I'm listening to a book called The Five Families by Selwyn Robb, which is an extensive accounting of the Italian mafia in America from basically a little bit before Lucky Luciano to modern times. And it is super deep. I mean, really deep. And that is kind of dicey every so often, because in terms of having the kids in the car, because it reads like a textbook most of the time until there's a quote. And then they'll say, and then John Gotti said, "Go fuck yourself, motherfucker." And then
nice.
Yeah. So when they're not in the car, now this is going to be a bit of an explanation, but 20 years ago, there was a show on the BBC, on Channel 4, actually, so not like the main BBC, called Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which was a concept. It was like a high concept show where the creator, a guy named Matt Holness, teamed up with some very funny guys, Matt Berry and Richard Ayoade. The high concept is that this character, Garth Marenghi, is a horror writer who has also developed a TV show about this hospital where weird shit happens, and that hospital's name is Dark Place. And so they have 6 episodes where Garth Marenghi introduces each show sort of quasi-interview style. Interspersed throughout clips of the shows are interviews with him and other actors explaining stuff happening in the show that you're watching. And it's all bizarre stuff, devils being summoned through portals and shit like that. And then stuff that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, like a guy getting into a shotgun fight at a funeral. Anyway, so fast forward 20 years, and people keep asking about Garth Marenghi, and he hasn't touched that character in a very long time, this Matt Holness. So he decides to write an entire novel in character as Garth Marenghi writing a novel. And that novel's name is Terror Tome. So if you go and look it up on Amazon, Garth Marenghi having written Terror Tome, and it is written just like Garth Marenghi would have written it. It's like condescending to the reader. It gives way too much explanation where none is needed, and it gives very little explanation where a lot would actually be needed. And it's all super intentional and very funny. There's a line that I read to Caroline the other day where he's reading in sort of like a AM radio policeman's voice. He's like,
"There's a riot going on at the local asylum. Patients are defecating with impunity all over the place."
It's just lines like that.
Marenghi was hilarious. I loved that show. It was so funny. So the idea that they're like taking that character and having him become like a novelist for this, hilarious.
But it's like
a mess.
But it's a couple layers removed from the actual guy writing the book,
Right.
which is what makes it hilarious. Anyway, it's a very high concept kind of thing. I don't know how wide the audience is going to be for this, but
because you really had to have seen the show to appreciate Garth. Like,
yeah,
as the,
right.
as the writer.
That's yeah. You need to have a memory of a show that only ran for 6 episodes in England on not the big channel but the other channel.
I can't believe it was only 6 episodes.
Yeah, but he
Have I
claimed
seen them all that many times?
when he explains the show, he says it had a short run in Peru.
Hilarious.
Caroline, book club
Yes.
recently changed your life, which is not always true with book clubs. Sometimes the book hits, sometimes it misses. But I think this one was a hit. Tell us
Changed
about
my
it.
life. Good Lord, that's probably too strong. But so for listeners who
Made
have
an
listened-
impression.
Made
I'll
an
say.
impression. For those of you who know myself and Paul a little bit from our other podcasts, you guys know that we have a deafblind daughter. So I read this book for a book club called Deafblind Champion, a true story of hope, inspiration, and excellence in sports and life. It's by Kevin Frost, and it was excellent. It definitely comes across as a reader as like you're reading someone who just wrote down their motivational speeches. So a lot of the chapters are a little resume-ish, like here's something that I accomplished, and here's when I did it, and here's where I was, and here's who was with me, that kind of stuff. But the overall story of inspiration and how amazing he is, like, such a proponent for advocacy and lobbying and all this charity work. It was great. I definitely recommend it. It's only like 130 pages. It's really quite short. You can get it on Amazon as a paperback or on Kindle. So I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great book. I highly recommend. Kevin Frost seems like an amazing person. And just, the fact that he's deafblind is a portion of his personality, but the fact that he has just such perseverance and just works so hard, it's just like, wow, just completely wow. I think it gives you a really great glimpse into the obstacles and challenges that anyone with disabilities is facing, but particularly if you're deafblind. Like, this is a whole other concept that most people never think about. So go check it out. Go check it out on Amazon. Deafblind Champion.
The other big thing happening this week is in the world of movies. As we move into news of the week, Oscar nominations came out earlier this week, and the world is abuzz with snubs and flubs and other nominations. For my part, I've seen almost none of the nominees. I don't know about you guys. Are there any frontrunners that you have seen that you are recommending? Are there any movies that you haven't seen that you definitely need to check out that have piqued your interest, that you're making a concerted effort to go watch?
The availability of the Banshees of Inisherin and the fact that it's about Ireland does seem to suggest that maybe I should spend a little time watching this argument between these two grown men. Since it's on HBO Max, I could just go watch it right now if I wanted, with very little effort. So that probably will be something that I make an effort to watch. Is there anything that caught your attention, Caroline?
I mean, Top Gun Maverick, I think, is something that everybody enjoyed over the summer, right? I think we were all like, yeah, getting Top Gun back. That was super nostalgia. I have tried to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once like 5 times. I have been in the wrong place at the wrong time. I tried to watch it on a plane thinking I would like close my eyes and also be listening to it somehow. That was a terrible idea.
She's seen it nowhere.
Exactly. I've been wanting to watch it, but it's all subtitled and I just couldn't. I did not have the energy to read everything. So I couldn't. But Paul, you saw The Fabelmans and you saw Avatar.
All right. So All Quiet on the Western Front, I've not seen. I saw the original I saw the one that came out with John Boy in it, I guess in the 70s or 80s. Avatar I really liked. I don't think it's a best picture, but I mean, it's a great adventure and continuation as long as you can.
$2 billion says you're wrong.
Like I said, the Banshees of Inisherin, I probably will end up seeing. Elvis, I did not get a great recommendation from some family members on that one, but here's a little fun fact. I've never seen a Baz Luhrmann movie all the way through. None of them. 0 Baz. Not a single one. Everything, Everywhere. Yeah, I have not had the chance to see it. Fabelmans, I took the kids to see. I was one of the few that actually did go see that one in the theater, apparently, because I'll give Spielberg a chance pretty much any time. The thing is, I was hoping for more of the character that was portraying young Steven Spielberg. Not the same name, but, that was understood that that's semi-autobiographical. And his drive to push through whatever was going on in the family to make films and things like that. And that's kind of present, but it is definitely the B plot compared to the strife between his parents and his mom falling in love with another man. This is all historical fact. It's not a spoiler. He explains it in interviews. It's a done deal. But that doesn't make it a bad movie. That just made it a different movie than the one I expected.
I wanna go over to Best Animated Feature because I have a really soft spot in my heart for Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, and I love Marcel so much, and he's so adorable. And I had to go through such great lengths to see Marcel. It was crazy to me. I actually went to the movie theater with tickets with the kids, and they were not showing the movie. They were like, yeah, no, we just aren't playing it. And I'm like, but I have tickets for the show. It's the first time it's ever happened to me in my life. I was like, what? That was the day I ended up seeing Elvis, which I know is nominated for a lot of different things. And I really disliked Elvis, and I love Elvis. I had taken the kids to go to Graceland, and I love it, love it. But this was not a great Elvis. I did not love Elvis. But I hope Marcel the Shell with Shoes On wins.
I haven't seen any of those except for Puss in Boots. And having seen Puss in Boots, I can only assume that it won't win. Just based on that all of these others have some sort of like heart or message or I don't know what.
Children would be so upset with you. They love Puss in Boots.
But it's just a popcorn movie, and all these.
They've seen it, I think, 3 times.
But I'm saying
in the theater,
these others are like strong thematic kind of movies, moral kind of movies, right? And Puss in Boots is a cat adventure, and that's fine.
A cat adventure. Well, some people are super into cats and adventuring, so they will be into it, I'm so sure.
I feel seen.
Was there anything that stuck out to you, Mike, in all of the Oscar nominations in any category?
I'm also throwing my weight behind Marcel, too. The animated movies are the ones that I've actually seen most of as far as categories go. I'm throwing my weight behind Marcel, one, because I think it's got a ton of heart. I love Jenny Slate and everything that they've done with the shorts and stuff. But stop motion animation is such a treasure. It is a national treasure art form, and you have to, I feel very strongly, if it's remotely done well, and I think Marcel the Shell with his Shoes On is done
incredibly sweet.
Well, I think it's incredibly well done. On top of it, the heart aside, it's such well done stop motion animation combined in the real world. You have to honor those things because it's gonna disappear. It's so expensive and it's so impractical for studios to throw money behind to make these projects, the stop motion animation projects. You have to support it when it's remotely done well. If nothing else, the heart for sure. On top of it, the story on top of it, it's sweet, it's wonderful. The fact that they were able to do a full-length feature film with this little silly shell and make you feel something.
This little silly shell
but
with
make
the most
you feel
adorable
something.
songs. He sings the most adorable songs. My kids were just dying at his little songs. And I mean, you're right. Like, even when we talk about things like, oh gosh, location scouts and all these complicated ways that we decorate and do all these things on set, this show is so small but adorable and so perfect. Like, I don't know, I just love it so much. I hope that it gets some accolades. And you're right, in terms of like, really appreciating an art form, this is something that it's so niche and it's so tiny, but it's so wonderful. Like, it really makes you feel like you're watching something that, is someone's heart on the screen.
I saw something that you might get a kick out of, Mike. You remember the movie Isle of Dogs? It was Wes Anderson's stop motion follow-up, I guess, to Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Another good one.
And this was only available in VR, so you would need a VR headset. But it was a whole segment of stop motion with like the dogs talking to you in the VR headset. But since it's 360 degrees, you can turn around and look around. And what you can see behind the talking dog is the entire workroom where it is being animated. So while the dog is talking to you in character in real time, they're also showing you the frame from whatever is happening in the workshop at the same time. So you can see the guy leaning just off camera from having just moved the dog's mouth or eyebrows or whatever.
Oh,
and
that's crazy.
And that happens 24 frames a second. So you can see this kind of fast motion dude coming and going and wearing different shirts because it, took so long to make this because he came back tomorrow. But the dog is still just talking to you in real time with Ben Schwartz's voice or whatever.
Very cool. What a cool thing to do with the medium, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really neat.
That's a great use of it.
Yeah.
I love that. That's very cool. The Oscars are March 12th on ABC. It is the end of January. I am committing in like the next 3 weeks because so many of these are now available for video on demand, if not in the theaters themselves. And most will be re-released now that they've been nominated into theaters. I am making a commitment to myself to go see as many of these as possible in the next like 3 weeks. And I think we should propose doing a dedicated Oscars episode, something that we've actually talked about on Pod Clubhouse. I think every year we've been in existence at least once and have never actually done. So maybe this is the year that we finally delve as we expand with this new show.
I'm definitely curious about Brendan Fraser, for instance, in his big comeback role. The main cast of Everything Everywhere is being nominated as well as the movie itself. Mm-hmm. If those same themes that are being explored were just being done with like a superhero costume, I would have already seen this movie because it's the same magical reality warping shit that happens in Doctor Strange, right?
Right.
But it's just, I just haven't prioritized seeing this movie yet. So I feel you on feeling like I need to catch up.
I became such a hermit with the pandemic. I was someone who literally went to the movies every week. I reliably was at the movies at least once every week prior to 2020. I think I maybe saw 4, maybe 5 movies in the theater last year total.
I think the pandemic has made us all make our viewing at home more comfortable and more everything. I think all of us got bigger TVs. All of us got more comfortable couches. All of us got like all the things. And we kind of got used to like having like our creature comforts during a show or a movie.
That's the thing, though. I don't like watching movies at home. That's the rub. That's why I'm not watching these movies, because I don't like watching movies at home. I like the movie experience. I like sitting in a dark theater. Pain feels good in a place like this. Nicole Kidman's 100% right. It does. Heartbreak feels good in a place like this. But there's something still kind of blocking me from getting my ass back in those seats on a regular basis. It takes something like a big blockbuster superhero movie. It's something if like Tom wants to go see it, that's what's really getting me out. On my own, where I would go once, twice a week by myself, I'm not doing that anymore. Like I've lost that motivation. I need to find that mojo again to get out to the theaters.
Well, you're certainly not the only one, because there's a lot of other people. I mean, like you were saying, Paul, like not, very few people saw Fabelmans and stuff like that.
Well,
like
2022 is a bad year.
It's really rough
for movies.
So that's my personal commitment to myself and to this podcast. I'm doing it for you guys. This is where we play the _patriotic_ music. To get off the couch, get off my ass, put down TV shows that aired for 3 people to watch on this channel no one has, and go watch a fucking movie in the theaters. That's what I'm going to do for you people, so we can talk about movies at the end of February ahead of the Oscars. We're going to get in the conversation, people.
Would you like Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, or
something like Patton, maybe? Is it if you could project a giant flag behind me while I say I do it for all Americans every day. All right, Caroline, take us to the sad news of the week.
No, this is not my sad news of the week. Paul, would you like to discuss the sad news of the week?
Well, we had a significant Hollywood firing this week. Justin Roiland, the creator of TV show Rick and Morty and co-creator of Solar Opposites and executive producer of a new show called Koala Man, has been kicked off of all of those shows, as well as he resigned from his own video game company that he started.
Squanch, I think it's
Squanch,
called Squanch. Yeah.
So he has charges pending from a scuffle in 2022 with a woman that wound up with 2 significant charges of like battery and false imprisonment, if I recall correctly.
Felony domestic violence. I can read you the actual statute. More than a scuffle. It's a felony charge. It's a significant charge. It resulted in serious bodily injury for him to be charged with it. It's a serious charge, and I think that's why it cost him the gigs and so rapidly. The crazy thing is that it happened 3 years ago, and it only came out because NBC happened to report on it 2 weeks ago at this point.
That part is so odd to me. I mean,
Hollywood, baby.
Yeah. I know that Paul enjoys these shows and a lot of other fans enjoy these shows. And so hopefully they will be able to find a different path, find a way to get through this, and be able to do something that makes their audiences happy, because it definitely feels like, what do you do now whenever this type of thing happens? And you're like, okay, well, what do you do when like the main person isn't there anymore? So this is going to be one of those situations. I know, Paul, you're hopeful, crossing fingers that these shows don't just go away completely.
No, I really enjoy them. I haven't actually watched Koala Man yet, but I met the whole Koala Man crew at Comic-Con last summer because they were in the same press room as Solar Opposites, because Justin Roiland, I think he was their bootstrap into reality. You know, I think they were nothing, and then they met Justin, and he got them a show, basically. And then once he came on board, then all of a sudden they get like guest stars like, I think like Sarah Snook and Hugh Jackman, and like actual big name actors are a part of their Koala Man show.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting story to keep an eye on, though, because they're going, the Rick and Morty especially, because they're going to have to recast the 2 main voice actors now. It's going to stay in the news. I mean, as far as of right now, nothing has actually happened with the arrest charges. Nothing has happened trial wise.
That is true. I mean, the dude hasn't even gotten his day in court. It's just that that's where we are in society right now, because they are just charges at this point.
Sure. There, a tremendous amount of allegations have started to come out on unrelated to these charges about him since, Roiland is going to have a long day. So for fans of the show, I would definitely focus on, the voice acting, casting, and as those shows move forward, I'm impressed that Adult Swim said right away that the show was going to continue, and Hulu followed suit with Solar Opposite, that those shows are going to continue even without him. That's the kind of commitment to a show that you wished some of these networks were making, instead of canceling even when they're fully produced. So hopefully, the shows themselves can survive, because again, that's tons of people's jobs on the line. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people, if not thousands and thousands in animation, to say nothing of the fan base that enjoys those shows.
If I was Dan Harmon, I would feel a little...
Dan Harmon should keep his head very, very low. Dan Harmon should not speak out about this, because he has his own closet full of skeletons, and he would be very wise to not weigh in on this. And yeah.
And he's also got Rick and Morty. He's got like 2 other animated shows. He's got the Community movie. And he admits he's a slow writer. Rick and Morty might have a separate showrunner from the creators, but I've listened to Harmontown long enough to know that if Dan Harmon is the creator of your show, he's the fucking boss. It doesn't matter who the showrunner is or anything like that. If he's on set, he's the boss. So that's a lot for him. But he is not the same guy that got fired from Community 10 or 15 years ago. He is a very much more calm down, understanding guy. But at his car.
Well, he was driven to the brink of literally losing everything. I mean, his behavior, in shows, and then his personal behavior, I think, served as a cautionary tale for him and for a lot of other people. So it's good to hear that he has calmed down. But the whole Harmontown crew and all of the other shows, podcasts and stuff that are attached to Dan and all those things, I think they've all been pretty quiet about the Justin stuff. I'm curious to see where they go and where things come out. So.
We had some good news in animation, though, this week. We got The Simpsons renewed for seasons 35 and 36. Family Guy got renewed for seasons 22 and 23. And Bob's Burgers, our huge favorite around this house, is renewed for seasons 14 and 15.
It almost makes you wonder how, given the really incisive barbs that Seth MacFarlane makes about people, actual people on his shows, but he's had this longevity and he's had excellent fortune, actually, as a producer, a writer, and a creator. And he has no problem getting co-stars to be on guest stars, to be on his shows. And he's kept his nose clean this entire frickin' time.
Everyone that you hear talk about him talks glowingly about him. He doesn't seem to be malicious, despite how biting Family Guy can be in its humor, and American Dad sometimes even more so. I've never really heard, other than some people that maybe just don't like the fact that his jazz work and all of the jazz albums that he puts out. Generally the people that work with him have mostly good things to say about him. It's interesting. It really is interesting. I can't believe we all remember the days where Family Guy was canceled.
Yeah, sure.
Several times. It was constantly kind of being canceled, and now we're looking at seasons 22 and 23.
Hey, to bring us full circle back to the beginning, too, Last of Us already got renewed for season 2. So if you are getting into Last of Us, you're already can just sleep easy knowing that you're going to get more stories.
Unless it gets Zaslav there, unless they produce season 2 and then decide never to air it.
We hope you guys have enjoyed this first installment of Pop Culture Review with Pod Clubhouse. We're going to be with you every week discussing shows that we're watching and TV, movies, books, music, whatever comes out. We're going to be giving you some information and letting you know things that we're enjoying. Maybe you enjoy it. Maybe you want to check it out. Maybe you guys have some listener feedback you want to give us about things that you're watching you want us to check out and give you our feedback. We'd be happy to. This is Caroline.
This is Paul.
And this is Mike. Thank you for listening to Pod Clubhouse's Pop Culture Review. If you wouldn't mind heading over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and rate, review, and subscribe. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. Tell us what you want to hear. Tell us what you're watching, what you're listening to. We'll take it in. You leave us a nice review. We'll read it on the air. We'll make you famous. We'll make you internet famous. And we just appreciate you guys the same way that Fox appreciates The Simpsons going into 800 plus episodes.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.